Hi everyone, I wanted to go back to talk about the inner Mystic Ally Monk yet again, and I want to highlight the most effective speed farming setup. So you might have seen my Daibo video that I made a few weeks ago at the start of the season when I was just blasting with a monk at early Paragon levels. That was a very popular setup that a lot of people enjoyed, and I want to give you some pointers about how to play Shenlong solo speeds. So I've done this a little bit last night because I need to level some more legendary gems because of too many hardcore rips, and I decided to try out this one, which I actually haven't done at all the entire season so far. My setup for this was not exactly on point, so especially my weapon shard was not what it should be. I'll show you in a second. And in general, my gear is not 100% optimized, but I do have pretty good paragons, and obviously I have quite a lot of experience with the build so far, so that it turned out to be rather easy. Here on hardcore I have to be a little bit more careful, so I can't go all in and play like a super squishy version. I had a bit of extra vitality, I had a cheat death passive, but you don't really need these things because the setup is actually kind of tanky once you have a bit of paragons. If you're playing this at earlier levels, then I would recommend just playing with the Daibo version, or alternatively you can also play with Lefebvre's and Spirit Guards for insane extra toughness. So if you have this combo instead of the Orgult set, you are basically not gonna die because you get so much damage reduction for free. With this setup you are able to farm all the way up to GR 130 solo speeds in 2 to 3 minutes. So usually the pace is slightly slower than something like the Daibo setup that has Ingeum and the Fragment of Destruction, but you can probably increase it by something like 4 to 5 tiers in the greater of difficulties, so that you overall end up with more experience per hour, a little bit less loot, but you have better key efficiency. So this is kind of the trade you gotta make. The main difference here is you have to play around the Shenlong's buff. But the good part is that whenever you press Mystic Allies, you get 200 Spirit for free. As you can see, my Spirit is constantly jumping back up when I press the button, and you can essentially stay in Shenlong almost the entire run without really having to worry very much. Sometimes you skip quite far and you don't actually keep the buff because you don't reset your Mystic Allies fast enough with Messerschmitt. But this is not really the biggest deal because you just punch a few seconds and then you press Mystic Ally again and you're back to full. So the Shenlong management is actually not such a big deal, and if you get a bit of like a feel for the build and you know which pulls to prioritize, what to skip, then it will not really be that hard. So I'll show you my character that I have used for those runs, and I also have a defeat planner setup here. This is the Shenlong speeds / group variant, and there is one important little twist, and that is that it runs the Dregs of Lies with the 5-second cooldown reduction when you kill an elite enemy. So if you remember the Daibo setup, it used to run with the Essence of Anguish for the extra cooldown reduction, and then a Fragment of Destruction to essentially get a Messerschmitt proc on your helm, and an Ingeum to just constantly spam Mystic Allies all the time. So here I wouldn't actually recommend this because first of all you're going to be quite squishy without the Terror Shard, and on top of that getting more damage taken from Essence of Anguish, but instead you get damage reduction and you get extra damage and stuff like that. And here you have insane cooldown resets anyway with the Dregs of Lies. So this actually works really well. The good thing is that unlike Ingeum, this proc actually happens every single time you kill a minion or one member of a blue pack. So you get essentially 2, 3, 5 resets every single pack. So when you don't finish the entire pack in one go, you can just spam Mystic Ally over and over until everything is gone, which is extremely helpful sometimes when elites are spread out, or there's a ghost that goes into the wall, or there's a burrowing leaper that goes into the ground, or they have shielding. You know, all these kinds of things that happen in a run that can kind of mess you up are basically taken care of from this effect, because you're almost guaranteed gonna get at least one member of the pack or one minion, and then you can just keep spamming until everything is gone. This is incredible. The trade-off here is that you deal a little bit less damage overall, so you lose this stacking damage effect that gives you 0.5% damage up to 100 times. So this is an average of around 25% damage increase, sometimes up to 50, sometimes 0. So the inconsistency is also making speedruns yeah, a little bit clunky. So losing that is actually not really so bad, and the overall loss is something like around 1 tier worth of damage, and instead you gain much more consistency with your cooldowns. The great part about the Dregs of Lies is that it not only resets your Mystic allies, but it also resets your Epiphany. So for example, when you engage in Elite Pack and you're about to press your Mystic ally button, you can just activate Epiphany again, and it gets instantly reset as well, so that it won't eat further Messerschmitt procs afterwards. So you have 15 seconds of Epiphany, and you can try to find the next pack. Similar with Serenity and Dashing Strike, so you can run in with Serenity, and if the timing works out well, then you can essentially instantly recover your whole Serenity cooldown, you can recover your Dashing Strike, so it is amazing. In general, auto setup, you stack a lot of cooldown reduction, so you want to have 60% or more even. So I have 7, 8, 8, 8, 10, and 10. So yeah, this is basically as good as it gets, and there's a Gogok on top of this, so that when it's stacked, it's something like 65% or so. So this is kind of the value you want to shoot for with the Terror Shard socketed that gives you minus cooldown reduction. So you really want to stack as much as possible to make sure that this is like smooth and a fluid type of gameplay. Because when you don't have elites, you rely mostly on the Messerschmitt's Reaver to reset your cooldowns. And you can actually spam your Mystic allies in big trash packs, but not on every single monster type. There are definitely monster types where you have very few enemies, or you simply don't find large pulls, and then you have to wait sometimes, and then you might take damage, you lose your squirts buff, and it might just fall apart quite quickly. And if you're also kind of squishy, then you might even die. So you really want to make sure that the runs that you do are going at a really fast pace, as you can see here again. So in general, you want to basically one-shot trash quite easily, like this. You want to jump in there in a big pack, you press the Mystic Ally button. As you can see here, I'm basically spamming it whenever there's like a pull around me. And I do run the Cyclone Strike that costs less resources, because this allows you to keep your Shenlong's buff rolling more easily. Implosion has a bigger radius, which is nice, but it costs 50 spirit, and Eye of the Storm only costs 26, which is essentially half of that. And like this, you can dash forward, do a Cyclone Strike, and not lose your Shenlong buff so fast. And this really helps you to keep it up and press Mystic Allies again. And you see here that I always try to either press Mystic Ally fast enough to recover my Spirit Globe, or when I see that my Shenlong buff is dropping entirely, then I will try to punch a little bit for around a second or so until I'm roughly at maybe 20-25% Spirit, and then you press Mystic Ally. Here's actually an example of the Dregs of Lies doing work, so I'm gonna show this here. So we have some Mystic Allies already active. You see that I just pressed the button, I killed a few things, and then we're gonna get a few explosions here. And then I will wait for the cooldown with my Serenity, and here we press Mystic Ally again, but not the entire pack will die, but I get immediately reset here. Like the entire Mystic Ally is back, and you don't necessarily want to press it like right after, but usually you want to wait like around 2 seconds or so to actually give your Mystic Allies enough time to do their thing, because they don't all explode at the same time. But then you press it again, and you see here the last member dies, and I have Mystic Allies ready yet again. And my Epiphany is also pretty much reset that I just pressed. And then we jump to the next pack and we repeat. So you essentially want to go Elite Hunting. You can even play the setup with Ingeum in the cube instead of Messerschmitt if you really want. But personally, I enjoy the Messerschmitt playstyle more, because it gives you more flexibility and more consistency, because sometimes you just don't find elites in the Ingeum timer, and then it feels kind of clunky. So I would recommend Messerschmitts here. But as you can see, the setup works like a charm, and the Shenlong management is pretty easy once you have figured out how to press Mystic Ally in the right moment every time. The XP per hour that I'm getting in these runs is somewhere like around 5 to 6 trillion. If I include pools here, then it can definitely boost us quite a lot higher. And as I mentioned, my Dregs of Lies is also not really well rolled. So in the game here, I actually have one that has % damage instead of crit chance or fire damage, which would be the preferred choices here. So that alone can probably boost me by another tier, and I could get some minor upgrades. For example, my weapons, I have life per hit, I have resource cost reduction. Both of these stats are essentially useless for these speedruns, so this could be double attack speed or something like this to boost me a little bit more. And there could be some other like minor optimizations, for example, better rolls or some organs even that I'm missing, and then this would definitely work a little bit better. But in general, if you have been doing a lot of inner speedruns, you might want to take it to the next level and the ultimate setup, so to say. So this is essentially like people play in groups with the Messerschmitt and insane cooldown resets, but here you do it in solo with the Shenlongs and you just annihilate. Obviously, when you're a little bit lower Paragon, you probably want to include a few more defensive choices, or you can also go for greedier choices later on. So for example, you could also change blinding speed to radiance for the extra attack speed, giving you more damage for your Mystic Ally explosions. You could potentially remove the Guardian's Path as well for something like Unity, because you don't really have these large assimilation stacks in speedruns, so this is actually quite useful passive. But those two dodge effects are also quite helpful to actually keep up your Squirt's Necklace, which is a quite important damage buff here. So if you notice in those clips that I have just shown, I try to keep up my Squirt as much as possible using Serenity, so you are completely immune, you don't lose the buff. And like this, I can walk into a pack, blow it up, and sometimes get immediate Serenity resets, and maybe I get hit by an ability, but I dodge it, so I don't actually lose the squirts. So this is quite helpful. And this also concludes this video here, so hope this helps you for your own Inner Monk adventures. I definitely had a blast with that build, but I'm mostly just in pushing mode all the time, so I'm not really playing the Monk very much myself anymore. But here is the ultimate XP setup, so to say, and if you play this well, you can definitely go beyond GR 130 solo speeds in even sub 2 minute runs sometimes. So it is pretty incredible the XP you can farm with this, and reaching higher paragons is basically easier than ever for a solo player. So make use of it. Hope you liked the video, and I'll see you guys next time.